Hi guys, the component of the success path we are focused on improving this week is living true in finances. This means managing your finances in a way that enables you to fully experience life without having to constantly worry about running out of money. It means having the financial security and mental peace of knowing that the needs of you and your family's future are taken care of. Why is this important? Well, it's important because not having enough money is one of the greatest stresses in people's lives, which is why when I wrote my first book on the real cause of the surging obesity epidemic, I suggested that the primary cause for people gaining weight was a spiritual crisis compounded by economics, something I still stand by today. And that's because, according to research, concerns about money are among the most frequent reasons for feeling stressed out. Without financial security, you are always looking over your shoulder for the next problem. You know, bills that demand payment now when you don't have the available funds, children that need medical attention that you cannot afford, or repairs that must be done immediately can all wreak havoc in your state of mental peacefulness. You know, just think about it. Could you sleep at night if you're constantly worried about being able to afford your next mortgage or rent repayment, or even whether or not you can put food on the table? Oh no, I couldn't. In this way, the stress of not having enough money can have an adverse reaction on your overall mental and physical health and well-being. And you know, I hate seeing people struggle with finances, but I do coach people all the time who seem to have some amount of financial stress in their lives. And a big reason for this is because they have never really been taught how to manage their finances. You know, not only is it not really taught in schools, but most parents don't educate their children about finances because they haven't mastered the topic themselves. You know, many of us have grown up with parents who live from paycheck to paycheck, and as such, the only advice that you've probably received has been to study hard so that you can get a cushy 9-to-5 job and make more money than what they have. In other words, to spend your life climbing the corporate ladder just to be financially safe or something along those lines. And at the end of the day, money makes the world go round. And whilst it isn't everything, it does play a huge role in our lives. Sure, it won't solve all your problems, but what having money does do is it gives us more freedom and more choice. Choices of where and what we want to eat, of how much we invest in our health and well-being, on how much time we spend with our families, choices on where we want to live, on where we want to send our kids to school, or where we can go on vacation, and so much more. And so in this way, money has a profound impact on every area of our lives, including our choices around work, relationships, health, and you know, everything else, which explains why we spend most of our lives earning it. Money is nothing more than a form of energy and an enabler to live life on your own terms. It's true that you can't buy happiness, health, or love, but you can indeed spend your money so that it makes you healthier and happier, something I'm all about. And sometimes it can even amplify your relationships. You know, just think of being able to visit your loved ones if they're in another country, for example. As Henry David Thoreau once said, wealth is the ability to fully experience life. The things you want to experience might differ from, you know, my goals and ambitions, but at the end of the day, we both need financial resources to make our dreams happen. By being financial, we are more able to live the life that we want to live as opposed to the life that we have to live. So how do we ensure that we are living true when it comes to our finances? Well, first and foremost, we need to ensure that we are not living beyond our means. In other words, Don't buy stuff that you don't need unless you can really afford it. What everyone can or can't really afford is different because some of us earn a high wage whilst others earn a much lower wage. Some examples of spending more than you can afford on non-essential items could include buying designer clothes, handbags, fancy cars, boats, going to fancy restaurants, or even eating smashed avocado and drinking cafe lattes at your local each day. Sure, if you can afford all of these non-essential items, then go for it. Buy whatever you want in life. You should never feel guilty about buying things that you like for yourself. However, if you can't afford it, but still buy anyway, then that is when you begin to compromise the financial security of you and your family, and the financial stress begins to kick in. In other words, you're not living true to yourself when it comes to your finances. Okay, so the only way to ensure that you are not living beyond your means is to keep a budget. Keeping a regular budget, which will enable you to understand where your money is going each month. It enables you to have more control over how you spend your money rather than leaving it up to how you feel on any given day. It can help you to set goals, track your progress, and see the results. It helps you learn to live within your means while working towards financial goals that are important to you. And finally, it allows you to align your spending habits with your priorities, which is important. Any and all of which provide you with a solid foundation for financial success and stability, which is what we're all about. So how do we create a budget? At a basic level, you simply subtract your expenses from your income. It's as simple as that, okay? And make sure that the difference is negative. But there are really 4 main steps to creating a budget. And the first is to determine your monthly income. This is easy if your income doesn't fluctuate each month, okay? If, however, you're self-employed or your hours can vary, then take the average of possibly the last 3 to 6 months to get an idea of what you can expect to earn going forward. Obviously, if you're in a partnership and you're living together, then you should combine both of your incomes together to get your total income here. The second step is to calculate your monthly expenses. And what you do here is take a look at your expenses over the last month and then assign them different categories. And you can use as many categories as you like or as possible to give you an idea of how you spend your money. And you can always consolidate some later on to simplify things. But in order to ensure that you are clear if you are living beyond your means, it is essential that you have 2 overarching categories for your budget. And the first of these is your essential budget categories. In other words, your needs, and should include things such as the first one would be housing costs, which includes anything that you pay towards keeping a roof over your head. It would be considered a house expense. That includes things like rent or mortgage repayments, property taxes, and just general home maintenance costs. For most budgeters, this category is by far the biggest and generally equates for around 25 to 35% of your total costs. Next is transportation, which usually equates for about 10 to 15% of your total costs and includes any of the costs required to get you from point A to point B, such as car repayments, registration, fuel, maintenance, parking, other tolls, and even public transport. Next is food, which typically equates to around 10 to 15% of your budget and includes all essential grocery items. Now, many budgeters include dining out in this category. For example, going to a restaurant, work lunches, food delivery, etc. However, if you're someone who tends to spend a significant amount of money on things like gourmet food and wine, then you might want to put your non-grocery food expenses into one of the non-essential categories, which I'll talk about later on. Remember, the basic idea behind your budget categories is to split them up so that you can see what you really need to spend, okay, your needs separately from what you're choosing to spend, which is your wants. Okay, so next is your utilities, which is often equates for around 5 to 10% and includes things like water and electricity and gas bills for your home, as well as any expenses such as your mobile phone and internet expenses. Next is insurance, which often varies from between 10 to 25% of total budget costs, as it depends very much on your own preferences. Some budgeters like to categorize insurance with the things they're insuring, for example, including health insurance under the healthcare category and auto insurance under the transportation category, all costs. And this is a completely valid option if you like. Other budgeters include insurance separately as one of their basic budget categories. In that case, it should include all of your insurance payments, such as health insurance, homeowners or renters insurance, home warranties or protection plans, auto insurance, life insurance, and so on. Next is medical and healthcare, which often equates for around 5 to 10% and includes costs associated with maintaining your health and well-being. And this includes any out-of-pocket expenses for primary care, specialty care such as dermatologists, psychologists, etc., dental care, urgent care is another one, prescriptions, and medical devices and supplies. If you decide to split up your insurance into each separate home budget category, then just remember to include your health insurance premiums here too. Next is saving, investing, and debt payments, which often equates to about 10 to 20% of total costs. And despite arguably being the most important, this often is the most overlooked or underfunded home budget category. Although saving money doesn't have much impact on your day-to-day life, it has everything to do with your financial health down the road, which is so important. And whilst all of these components are interrelated, let's talk about debt first. And you need to be allowing enough funds in your budget to pay down any high interest debt you're carrying, such as credit cards, bills, and personal loans. The quicker you get rid of these, the more you'll be able to save. If you must use credit cards, then ensure that you pay it off before you get charged those high interest rates, or even opt for a debit card instead. So credit isn't even an option. Once you've paid down your high interest accounts, then it's essential to be allocating funds in your budget to pay down any low interest debt that you may be carrying, which most typically includes your home loan if you have one. Always allow for interest plus principal payments in your budget in order to pay off your mortgage faster. And just by the way, one of the best things that you can do to sleep better at night is to own your own house, because it makes you feel more grounded and settled as it becomes your rock, your base, so to speak. So always work towards this if possible. Next is the savings component, and the first thing that you want to save for is an emergency fund for any unexpected expenses. Without an emergency fund, you may find yourself in dire straits if you get blindsided by an unexpected medical expense, car accident, or sudden job loss, or anything else. If you already have this, then great, but if not, then you need to be putting money towards one. As a guide, you should have between 6 and 12 months of essential living costs stashed away for emergencies, a figure you can determine once you do your overall budget. It's also important to be putting away for anything else that you want to save for in the future. From a house deposit to a new car, a holiday, or anything else. Albert Einstein called compound interest the most powerful force in the universe. What he meant by this is that if you commit to savings now, then in the future your wealth will grow exponentially. So don't forget to allocate regular savings into your budget under this category, because if you cannot save anything, then you're going backwards instead of forwards, and that is not good for you or your family. In regards to investing, you need to be investing money towards your retirement account, which is a long-term plan to support you during your golden years. This includes your superannuation contributions. So ensure that you are allocating about 15% of your income towards super, which will also reduce your tax payments too, which is a win-win. So once you've budgeted for your family's essential needs, the money you have left for non-essentials is called your discretionary income. And this is what you'll use for all of your non-essential budget categories. In other words, your wants. And this often includes the following categories. The first would be a personal spending category, which equates for around about 5 to 10% of your total budget and includes anything that could be considered a personal care or lifestyle expense. Things like gym memberships, clothes and shoes, home decor, and furnishings and gifts. Because some personal care products are essential, such as soap and laundry detergent, you might want to include those in your food budget category. After all, you probably buy those with your other groceries anyway, so that'll be a perfect fit. Next is recreation and entertainment, which also often equates for around 5 to 10%. And this home budget category consists of your fun money, which is important. For most of us, carving out leisure time and money is essential to maintaining healthy work-life balance. And this budget category can include things like concert tickets, sporting events, family activities and vacations, streaming services like Netflix and other subscriptions, restaurants if you didn't include this under the food category, video games and hobbies. In other words, this home budget category includes all of your fun and entertainment. Enjoy it however you want to, because you know what, you've earned it. The final category is miscellaneous, which also equates for 5 to 10% of your total budget and is reserved for anything that isn't already covered in your basic budget categories. It can also be an overflow category when you need a little extra somewhere else. As an example, if you have a larger family, you might spend a fair amount on clothes and haircuts for your kids. If you've maxed out your personal monthly expenses category, you could account for those items here. Okay, so that's it for allocating your income based on simple budget categories. Remember, these budget categories are just a place to start. The key to success is to customize your budget in a way that makes sense for you. And so once you have done this, then you can move on to the third step, which is to create your first monthly budget by adding up all of your expenses from the last month and subtracting them from your monthly income amount. And you can do this on paper, it's how I like to do it, or with a budget worksheet or an online budget calculator. So once you've done this, then you've created your first monthly budget. If a difference is negative, you'll need to adjust some things to make sure you're living within your means. Because if you're not, then you're not living true, and that is going to cause you financial pain and stress both now and in the future. But if you still have some money left over, you can choose where it goes. After all, you know, what good is earning money if you can't spend it on what you want? However, with that said, before you decide to go out and splurge it all, consider putting it towards savings or paying down debt if you have a lot of it. It's all about balance here, and that's entirely up to you. The fourth step is just a matter of keeping track of your expenses, because creating a budget won't do you any good if you don't hold yourself to it. And so throughout the next and every month, take the time at least once a week to add up your expenses to make sure you're on track with your budget. While calculating your budget, consider whether you need to make adjustments. If it's, the middle of the month, for instance, and you've already spent three off your $400 grocery bill budget, either your budget was too conservative or you're overspending. So be honest with yourself about which one it is, and then make an adjustment to make sure that you don't go over your overall budget for the month. And you know what? That may mean taking money from another category or lowering your savings or extra debt repayments for the month if needs be at times. You've got to do whatever you got to do. So this is how you budget. The secret to budgeting, however, is finding whatever works best for you, okay? So what works for me is different to what works for you. And there are several different budgeting methods out there. While some of them require a lot of planning and tracking, others focus more on just general spending trends and don't take up as much time, including the zero-based budget, the envelope system budget, the 50-30-20 budget, and the pay yourself first budget. So be sure to check out all of those too. At the end of the day, I'm a holistic health expert, not a finance expert. And so whilst I've helped lots and lots of people live true when it comes to their finances, and in doing so, help them to reduce their financial stress and actually get ahead in life, the advice that I give is general advice and is not a substitute for seeking advice from an applicable specialist or finance professional. Therefore, I always recommend that you seek the advice of a professional such as a financial planner and or an accountant before making any changes to your finances. So are you living true when it comes to your finances? Thanks for watching. Be sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe to learn more about the other essential attributes of staying in your best shape. And until next time, watch what you chew, do what you need to do, and always live true.